Thank you all for being here this evening. We appreciate a spectacular turnout tonight. My name is Mark Murray. I'm the Vice Chairman of Meijer Incorporated. Has anyone ever heard of Meijer? Thank you. We have two purposes here tonight. One is to honor John Engler, which is a privilege for all of us. And the other, which we have also successfully done, is bring some additional resources to the Michigan Political History Society. And I want to take a minute to talk about the Michigan Political History Society before we move to the main point of the evening, which are some remarks we're all looking forward to about Governor Engler. So the Michigan Political History Society is about 25 years old. It was founded by Sharman Moore and the late Kevin Kelly. Many of us here remember Kevin well and fondly. Sharman, can you just raise your hand as the one who helped get all this started? Some of us, including myself, are life members. By being here tonight, if you're not already a member of the Michigan Political History Society, or you didn't know that, you are tonight. And you will be for a year. And I would really encourage you to take advantage of some of the programming with the idea that maybe you'd re-up and continue to be members in the years ahead. The Michigan Political History Society understands that history is a broad set of forces, and there's issues about quality of education and tax and everything else, but it deeply understands it's about people, and that our history is formed by individuals, and those individuals are the people who step into the arena and figure out solutions and make things better for us. This people question, sadly, around town here, we just had news of Representative Keevala yesterday. And it's a reminder that these are a whole set of good people and facing challenges. And that was a sad day for his passing. But this is about people. And everybody in this room knows that it takes something heroic, and it takes stepping forward, and it takes having a risk to be able to make things better. What the Political History Society will be doing, continuing, is a very good oral history program. I think there's 33 of them that have been done. I think the most recent one is Joe Schwartz, who's here with us this evening. If you haven't been on the website of the jjblivinghistory.com, I think is what it is, but you can get there from the Political History Society Facebook or webpage. Give it a try. There's some really, really wonderful interviews with people who are here, and some of the interviewers are here. I saw Bob LeBrant earlier. I know Bill Ballinger's done a number of the interviews. They're really quite good. They also put together a good library of political history books. It's currently up at the Grand Hotel. They're working with the State Library to have a special collection section available. And then June 26th to 28th, they have a gathering at the Grand Hotel, and there are accommodation deals available for those of you who are members. And Chris Thomas, long time head of Elections Bureau, will be the speaker and reflect back on his time as he now moves to retirement. Final thing on the Political History Society, I'd like to have all the board members stand up and be recognized for all your good work. They're all volunteers. Carrie Ebersole Singh, who is the president, will be up to offer some final remarks. So we have 9 speakers tonight, 3 of them by tape, and they all recognize that we're going to get out at a good hour tonight, and so they've left a lot of cutting stuff on the floor. They've left a lot of cutting material down. We're going to get a couple of good stories from each of them. I think it's going to be a delightful evening, but if you were waiting for the great revelation, the great story from Senator DeGrow. You may not get it because he may have had to cut that one. Now, who better to talk about the 46th governor of the great state of Michigan than somebody who actually knows, really knows what the job is? Someone who works in dog years and has relentless positive action, the 48th governor of the great state of Michigan. Governor Snyder.
Well, thank you. It's actually great to be here. John, Michelle, it's wonderful to have you here and to celebrate, John, the wonderful things you've done. Being a good nerd, I am a student of political history. So I think it's wonderful to have this organization doing great things. And I'm going to keep it simple because there are so many speakers. But I thought I'd share one insight that I really learned. And I learned a number of things from John Engler. Many of you don't know it because many of you had no clue who I was until I actually said I was going to run for governor. But I did exist before that. And actually, I got a call about helping the governor do some work with the Governor's Innovation Forums. And this was before the MEDC was created. It was part of the creation process. And he called on a number of us and shipped us all over the state. He shipped us to Michigan State, U of M, Wayne State, and up to Michigan Tech. And we held great sessions learning about Michigan's economy. So my story is probably not that humorous, but it really shows a great insight of someone that I've always respected. And he taught me a really good lesson. So after these Governor's Innovation Forums, I was the high-tech guy. And there weren't a lot of high-tech people in the state at that point in time, in terms of people holding themselves out to do that work. And so I said, Governor, can I come meet with you privately? So I went to his office, I went in the conference room, and I had a presentation. And I said, here's a number of things that I believe are great concerns for Michigan's economic future. And I brought him a problem. So I thought I was pretty smart. You know, I was identifying something that was a real problem. Well, I learned John Engler was smarter than I was. You know what his solution to that was? He looked at me, he goes, Rick, I want you to be chair of the MEDC. So I became chair of the MEDC, and I learned a good lesson on that one. If you ever bring John a problem, you better be ready with the solution. And I know a few people here, I've counseled them that, don't walk in my office in the same manner. But what happened then is I actually had a chance to work with them even more. Great people like Doug Rothwell. And it was amazing what the governor was able to achieve. We led the nation for like 3 years, at least 3 years running, for site selector in terms of bringing great jobs to Michigan, creating a foundation for the long term. And he did a tremendous effort in terms of making us a better, stronger state, not only in economic development, but education and good government. So he is someone I've always admired. He's been a good role model to me, being a governor today. I've felt with this event tonight, I only wish he would have been there with me and my wooden shoes on, joining me walking in the parade today. You might be that day that you kind of are happy you're not governor anymore. But the Holland Tulip Festival is one of the great events of our state, and I was proud to do my walk again in the wooden shoes. I passed the 5-mile mark now. But it's great to be here tonight to celebrate a person that has made our state better. And not only was he a great governor and a great leader, he's a great family man. So it's great to have Michelle with us, your daughter, and congratulations on 3 graduations. And I view it as the next generation of people. I'm going to talk them to coming back to Michigan one way or another. So thank you so much for an opportunity to share a few thoughts with you tonight.
Those of us who know Governor Engler and have had a chance to be around him know the powerful force and thoughtfulness about these big public issues, but we also know of his devotion to his family. And his family, his children, and to Michelle, to his siblings, to his love of his parents. We lost Agnes last summer at age 94. But we've asked Jim Engler, younger brother, to come and offer a few reflections from a family perspective. So Jim?
Good evening, everyone. As Mark said, I'm Jim, John's younger brother. I promised to keep it short tonight, so I'm just going to share a couple of stories. Actually, the first one is about our great-grandfather, Matthias John Engler. And I took this from a magazine from the Beale City Centennial, which was in the summer of 1975. And I quote the magazine, "This was told of the first man Engler, father of John and Frank Engler. When he was first in this country, while he was working in the woods, he became discouraged and he decided to return to his home in Europe. He stuck his axe in a stump where he was working and went back to Trier, Germany. Later, he decided to return to America, came back to this locality and to where he was working in the woods, and he found his axe right where he left it in the stump. He settled there, and the farm is now owned by the Engler family." That may explain some of John's reputation as a bit of a bulldog. As a farm kid, you're taught to succeed, you have to work. You have to plan ahead, be prepared for bad years by saving from the good years, and you're taught to look forward, not back. These are all traits that John exhibited during his career. Most of you don't know, at one time, shortly after high school, John was an entrepreneur. He and two friends operated a snack ice cream vending at a county park with a lake. John learned a lot of lessons that summer. One lesson was selling snacks to girls in swimming suits beat baling hay. Hiring your sisters for less than minimum wage increases the bottom line. And most importantly, you learn that selling hot dogs, chips, and ice cream is a hell of a way to make a living. John also, I believe 2 years, sponsored a New Year's Eve party. I'd like to say more about those, but my memories of those are a little blurry. The entire Engler family is immensely proud of John and what he's accomplished in his career. This would be especially true of our parents, Matt and Agnes Engler. John has always been connected to mid-Michigan. Many siblings, friends, relatives live in and around mid-Michigan. John, Michelle, and the girls were always available for functions that we knew were hard for them to attend and took away from their very limited downtime. Had I been given the task to predict the future when I was younger, I can say with certainty I would not have predicted John's successes as a politician or business leader. As I look back at it now, it's hard for me to believe John's ascent from a farm kid in Beale City to the state capitol and on to Washington would take what seems like a blink of the eye. And now to close, I'd like to quote one of my favorite politicians, Sir Winston Churchill. And I quote, "Now is not the end, it is not even the beginning of the end, but it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning." Thank you.
So as if there weren't enough things to do in Michigan when Governor Engler was serving as governor, there were also things going on in Washington. And he found allies in the governor's offices in other parts of the country, and one of his allies was Tommy Thompson. And Tommy Thompson and John Engler spent an awful lot of time working a little bit with and often in some opposition with the Clinton administration, trying to get some more control for the state so that these programs could actually be run more effectively at the state level. One of the things that often gets talked about was the great Clinton welfare reform initiatives of the 90s. They simply would not have happened but for John Engler and Tommy Thompson. And they're good for the fisc, they're good for the taxpayer, but even more important, they've been good for the poor in giving an absolute focus on work. We do have a video this evening from Tommy Thompson, and we'll let that one roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly an honor for me, a fellow governor of John Engler, to just take a moment to congratulate and wish my good friend the best. John Engler was an extraordinary governor. He was articulate, hardworking, dedicated to the people of Michigan, and he was my friend, and we competed day in and day out to who could be the best governor for their particular state. And I would have to admit that John Engler excelled in every capacity whatsoever. It is truly just a privilege to say to John and to Michelle, what a great couple, great family, great public servants, and great friends. I love you both and just wanted to take this opportunity to say congratulations, John and Michelle, and especially to you, my friend John, for all the hard work, the dedication, and the great job you did as governor of the state of Michigan. Just too bad, John, that you and I are still not governors. We would show these young whippersnappers how to really be good governors and dedicated to the people. Congratulations again, good luck, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
One of the most accomplished leaders in Michigan government in its history served a good run as Senate Majority Leader, served as Lieutenant Governor to Governor Engler, is now serving as the Chief of Staff to Governor Rick Snyder, someone who has made a difference for 10 million of us for decades. Dick, posthumous.
Well, I'm not going to talk about those years, John, that we did all those things in the Senate. What I want to talk about are things that most of these people don't know about. Most people actually thought John and I met in college, but that's not the case. We actually met in high school. John was chairman, he was senior in high school, and he was chairman of the Beale City High School Parliamentary Procedure Team. I was a sophomore. I was chairman of the Caledonia High School Parliamentary Procedure Team. And there was this contest we had to compete against. It was just like sporting events. You had a local contest, and then a regional contest, and a state contest. Well, this was a regional contest. I guess, fortunately for me, it happened to be held in my home high school, the Caledonia High School. Sean won't let me forget it. Well, needless to say, the best team won. Caledonia High School went on then to win the state championship, but John will never let me forget that maybe it was because there was a Caledonia student who was manning the stopwatch that couldn't read it correctly. But fortunately, that didn't impact our chance to get together later on. About 2 years later, as a freshman, I entered Shaw Hall, and I found John Engler, as a junior, was the president of the dorm, doing all the things he did later on, trying to take over everybody's life, showing them what the right way to do it. But I didn't get into that. But 2 years later, he came to me, and we had classes together, and he came to me, I think it was the spring of 1970, he came and showed me this paper he had done for a class. And he said, see this, I wrote this paper. This is how I'm going to be the next state representative from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And I looked at him, and I said, sure, John, okay. Well, he said, I need your help. You want to come up and help? I decided, sure, that'd be a lot of fun. Well, you know John Engler, when he does something, he has to do it full speed, 24 hours a day. So the first thing he did, he got a campaign office. Now, most people would get a campaign office, not John Engler. He had to get a place where he was going to be able to work on the campaign, live, sleep, and eat there 24 hours a day. So he didn't have a lot of money at that time. So he decided to lease this house in the student ghetto of Mount Pleasant, Michigan. This place was so bad, the students wouldn't even live there. It had a couple of bedrooms, and worst of all, it had a bathroom with only a toilet and a bathtub. No shower. Can you imagine 2 guys living all summer in a place without a shower? Well, we figured it out, but John Engler, showing his work ethic, would get up 5:30 every morning. He'd get ready, I'd go get ready, then we'd meet and figure out what we were going to do during the day. He'd go off his direction, I'd go off in my direction. And then finally at 10 o'clock, I'd get done. I'd be back there, I'd get in bed, I want to go to sleep. Well, finally about 11 o'clock, John rolls in. He's still working, he's out there every day, 11 o'clock. I said, oh, that's all right, go in there, go to bed. Well, he goes in, he gets in his bedroom, and instead of going to sleep, he's got to talk about everything that went on that day and about everything we're going to do tomorrow. I thought, John, go to sleep. This is a guy who every single night would talk and fall asleep as he was talking. So anybody that tells you he ate, slept, and drank politics, I can literally tell you he did. Now, I'm running out of time, so I probably shouldn't tell you about the time he left me standing at Heathrow Airport. I guess I can do that. John Engler, of course, won this landslide election that first time by 134 votes, I think. I hope I'm right. It's within 5 votes, give or take, that when you have a landslide, what difference does it make? And he decided we're going to go to Europe to celebrate over Christmas and New Year's. So we've got this student flight. We flew off. He had friends in London. I had friends in Denmark. I dropped him off in London. I went on to Denmark, said, well, I'll meet him back here after New Year's Day. 2 days before he had to be sworn in. We'll fly back, he'll get sworn in. I came back to London after New Year's, met him at the in London at his friend's house. We drove out to the airport. Unfortunately, they had an ice storm for 2 solid days. And so when we got ready to get on the airplane, they said, on these student flights, all these students got to go before you. They were ahead. They didn't get to go yesterday and the day before, so they're leaving today. You don't get to leave till the day after tomorrow. Of course, John said, I'm going to be sworn in as state representative in 2 days. You can imagine people in London, how much they cared about that. But John Engler, the bulldog, as Jim said he is, figured out some way to take that ticket with no seat, get on the airplane, get back to America. I have no idea to this day whether he sat in the latrine or on somebody's lap, and I was left there in the middle of London at Heathrow Airport. John, it's been a great honor for me to have been your friend, to have been there that night at the beginning when you won by 134 votes, and to be there at the end on January 1st, 2003, when we were standing in the governor's office talking about the things that you had accomplished. You've been a great leader for Michigan, and this tribute is well-deserved.
Carol Viventi, when I was working for Governor Engler, I was working in the budget office. I also spent a little bit of time in the Treasury, but we would get spectacular assistance and help from the governor's office. Obviously, the governor himself, I guess I'm telling nobody here, there's no news here about chiefs of staff and deputy chiefs of staff and cabinet coordinators. Carol Viventi was just tremendous in her role of keeping all of us coordinated and organized and moving forward. So good, capable partisan and good, capable, nonpartisan governmental leader. She served as the Secretary of the Senate for a number of years. Many of you know of her skills there. She's now over in the Department of Civil Rights. And Carol, we consider you to be one of the real successful parts and leaders of government, even though your name didn't get in the same kind of lights as other people. So thanks, Carol, for being here.
Good evening. Given the time constraints, I'm skipping the law school stories, like how Keith Pretty triggered our going to the law school, how John got an A in constitutional law, having been briefed with an outline 10 minutes before the exam, or how he recited an entire case in class that he hadn't ever read. I'm going to go back to the memories that I have of the first year that John had an office as a 22-year-old state representative and hired me, or as John referred to me, the best Japanese-American employee in the Capitol. Of course, I was the only Japanese-American in the entire Capitol. Every day, John would come in, sit at his desk, and read the newspaper. This would go on for at least the first hour of the day, every day. As many of you know, there's real time and there's Engler time, which is at least 30 minutes behind everyone else's time. I first learned about Engler time while watching John read his newspaper until way past time for committee to start or any other appointment that he might have. My second memory of John and newspapers is driving to, quote, Engler country, which was known to the rest of the state as Montcalm and Isabella counties, the 89th district. I get in the passenger seat of John's car. John's going to take me up to the country. John gets in the driver's seat, takes out his newspaper like this, lays the newspaper across the steering wheel and on the dashboard on the console. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe he's going to read for a minute. But oh, no. He reaches under the newspaper, starts the car, drives out of the Capitol parking lot, runs right over to 127 North, and continues to drive with his legs guiding the steering wheel while he's reading the newspaper. So, now, I grew up in Detroit, where driving is close to a combat sport, with people speeding, tailgating, and cutting others off. Apparently, country driving, while still done at high rates of speed, if John's driving, is done while reading the newspaper. I rather timidly asked my boss, John, would you like me to drive? And John says, oh, no, Carol, I know where I'm going. This is fine. Fortunately, he finished reading the paper after about 15 minutes, and I got to breathe for the rest of the trip. I was so grateful, and I'm sure the rest of the public was safer when John had a driver when he became governor. So, John, from day one, you were smart, quick to learn, articulate, late, but well-informed from reading those newspapers. I want to thank you for starting me on my public service career and bringing me back every time I left to try to work in the private sector. I'm grateful for your coaching me to have a positive attitude toward the bar exam, my education in politics, and for the many friends and colleagues, many of whom are in this room tonight, that I would have never met if you hadn't hired me back in the day. Thank you, John.
So those of us of a certain age know that if you want to do anything around K-12 issues, you better talk to Dan DeGrow, because Dan is absolutely the unambiguous, all-known and all-knowing person who really gets educational policy. Nobody else could keep up with him except Governor Engler. And he, so whether it's funding or governance or choice or capital, anything to do with K-12, that was Dan's domain. And the proof of his devotion, that this wasn't just, public policy and politics. What did he do when he retired? He went off to become the intermediate school superintendent in St. Clair County for a good, probably 20-year run, some 14-year run, from which he has just retired. So Dan?
Thank you, Mark. Dick, I don't know what it is about airports and the governor. These days, that's when I get a call. When he's in an airport, he's got some time to kill. But also, I remember 1986 on a trip to New York, where everybody's luggage made it back to Michigan except my wife's, and hers was in Toledo. I'm sure there's a connection somewhere. In any event, many who make the jump from legislative insider to statewide figure have a moment when that change is so noted. For John Engler, perhaps that moment was nearly 29 years ago, on October 12th, 1988. It was marked with a party right here in this room, and with a memorable song that forever and ever ruined the Chalet Fabre version for me. So to start, I want to give you Johnny Engler, the song.
He's turning 40 this year. Johnny Engler's your birthday. Our respects we'll have to pay. So on October 12th at Kellogg Center we'll play. It's a party and we all must attend. We're going to spend some cash, so it will be a bash. There'll be music and dancing and food, so don't you dare be late and try to find a date for Johnny Engler, Senate leader. I pray that someday we may see how great a state park leader Johnny Engler will be. Jimmy Blanchard had a party, you know. They all ate shish kebabs just to save their jobs. But when Johnny turns the big 4-0, we'll show the Democrats exactly where it's at with Johnny Engler. It's his birthday, and we know you're going to want to go. So put on your dancing shoes and send us some of your dough. Johnny Engler, he's turning 40 this year. Johnny Engler, he's turning 40 this year. Johnny Engler.
That's where it all began, with Johnny Engler right in this room. And for those of you who are not aware, the governor also has a great sense of humor. In the 1970s, a young Representative Engler was a thorn in the side of a large Democrat majority. No surprise, right? Well, one day Speaker Krim was so upset, he said he would give up 5 Democratic seats to get rid of Engler. While the press, probably Tim Skubic leading the charge, rushed to the Representative Engler for a response. His reply, "We have a deal if I get to pick the 5. John, also known as a master of state government and the legislative process. Proposal A came about when Democrats offered an amendment to abolish all property taxes for school. The governor quickly met with us, had the legislature adopt the amendment, pass the bill, say we would never, ever get an opportunity like this again. Even the free press, not always his best friend, realized his skill when their lead line the next day in the paper was, "Yesterday, Democrats in Lansing learned what many of us thought they should have learned long, long ago. You don't play poker with John Engler." How true that is. At the end of the movie, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the editor of a newspaper famously said, "When the legend becomes the fact, print the legend." And tonight we honor John Engler, the legend. John, I thank you for your service to our state for over 30 years. It was an honor to have you serve as our Senate Majority Leader, our Governor, more importantly, as my friend. Thank you.
So Tommy Thompson and John Engler in Washington trying to get things done, organizing the Republican team. Who was head of the Republican National Committee? A person who subsequently became governor in Mississippi, Haley Barbour. Haley is a master strategist. He's always playing both the long game and the short game. He makes the possible out of what seems to be the impossible. And he had no better ally and no better compatriot in those battles than Governor John Engler. So we have a video from Haley Barbour, and we can run it.
It's a real honor for me to be part of this event and honor my friend Governor John Engler. Our careers have really overlapped a lot from when he was a legislative leader in the 80s and his governorship, including the 4 years he was a governor while I was chairman of the Republican National Committee, and he was chairman of the Republican Governors Association part of that time. So John, it's a treat for me, and I particularly appreciate Susie and all the team allowing me to, with my accent, to do this without an interpreter. I know it's East Lansing, Michigan, and not everybody up there's got exactly the same accent I do. But friend, I have enjoyed working with you so much, so often. A lot of people don't realize that, at least when I was chairman of the Republican National Committee in the 90s, the most popular, the most influential, and the most powerful people in our party were governors. I think about you and Tommy Thompson, who I understand is going to be doing a video in tonight's program. People like Mike Levitt, Bill Weld, Christy Todd Whitman, George Bush, who you might notice is in the background here from his days as president. We had some tremendous governors who did great things, and your state's got another great Republican governor right now. And I hope that part of what starts tonight is our getting our heads together in Michigan to make sure that the next governor of Michigan is a Republican, because you've had some great ones. But John, I want to be able to say to you that not only do I appreciate what you've done for Michigan, for our party, but for our country. What you've done as an elected official and what you've done in the private sector at places like the Business Roundtable. Capable, smart people who are committed make a difference. And John Engler's made a difference. And we've also had fun in the process. I remember quite vividly in 1996 when I was chairman of the party and we had our national convention in San Diego, which is a fabulous place for a convention. And you were chairman of the RGA of Republican Governors, and the closing night event was the Melee for Haley, a huge, huge party there on the harbor in San Diego that you masterminded, put on, all the governors supported, and we had several thousand people who came, and a lot of memories, a lot of laughs from that, but it always reminds me when I think back of the convention of that great fun time, but of all the good times we've had. You know, John, I have been blessed in my political career to get to work for Ronald Reagan. Pretty heady stuff for a boy from Yazoo City, Mississippi. To have been chairman of our party, chairman of Republican Governors, governor of my state, political director of Ronald Reagan's White House. You know, what can you say? But one thing I think most people don't realize, the high point of my career has been the people I've been able to work with. Yes, Reagan and Ford and George W. and his daddy. Hopefully we're going to get to have that same kind of experience going forward with Donald Trump and the many members of his cabinet, some of whom, as you know, we've had the chance to work with over the years. But a lot of people think politics is a mean, hard business, and sometimes today, the way some people act, there's reason to think that. But I will never forget, and I will always be grateful for the friendships I've made, for the people who've been great allies. And John Engler comes right at the top of the list. So whatever they do for you tonight in Michigan, not enough, because you have done great things for your state, our country, our party, and our children's future. Take care, friend.
Governor Barber says sometimes it's mean, hard business. Well, one of the things the Michigan Political History Society stands up for and recognizes the fact that while there is partisanship, it's a legitimate, it's an important part of what makes government work. You got to win elections, you got to have contests, you got to have a contest of ideas and people. But across the aisle, there really are ways that can be worked together, people can work together for the future, together to make something good for everyone in the community, everyone in the state, everyone in the nation. Art Miller is the epitome of that, what this Political History Society stands for. Devoted public servant. He was the loyal opposition in some situations, Senate minority leader, working with the governor on a number of issues, and he could be an unalloyed partisan. He could hold his ground. And when it was time to find the final deal, he could find the final deal and get everything to go forward even better because he was there. Art?
Governor, thank you. Thanks for putting me behind Mr. Republican Haley. I just wish the governor could see I wore my President Trump tie tonight. I knew I was going to be the token Democrat here. There's three of us, Speaker Singh, Tony Darazinski, and it used to be Tom Costello, but he changed. He's not with us. He changed. But it's really a great privilege for me to be here tonight for my friend, our former state representative, our state senator, our governor, and the luckiest man in the world to have Michelle and those three outstanding young women of his life. Now, I'm a little older than Dan DeGros and Dick Posthumus and Carol. And I go back to the days when I came to the Senate 40 years ago, and there was already a young man writing legislation from Beale City. And I used to say, where in the hell is Beale City? My friend John Engler. And you know, the following year, 1978, you think the talk of the Capitol in Lansing would be Bill Milliken running for his last term as governor, but it was just, it used to be kind of comical because you'd see the old Republican guard and all the Democrats from the House, Bobby Krim. They were so worried about this young state rep who was known as the Republican assassin because he took out Russell Strange in 1970, and all of a sudden the clan or the group in the Senate, the Republicans, were so worried about him, not worried about helping Bill Milliken, they were worried about defeating John Engler. And he happened to be victorious and beat Jack Tepp, and he came to the Senate. And it was really nice. If you think he got a frigid treatment in the Senate from Krim, I thought Krim was the majority leader of the Senate for a while because he was always there wondering what John Engler's up to. And the Republican leadership, they threw him in some closet committees that I've never even heard of before. But John was smarter than all of them. And that's how I got to know John Engler, because I was the only one that would talk to him in the Senate. And as it turned out, he was smarter than them all. He went to law school, and he learned about that Michigan Constitution. And back in those days, in the 70s and the 80s, we didn't have computers. There were no cell phones. There were no emails. There was just meetings and face-to-face discussions. That's how we got things done in Lansing. And you got to know a man like John Engler, who I used to love when I got to become leader, and he was the majority leader. We'd go to the meetings. John did all the heavy lifting because I was in the minority, and he was running the show in the Senate. And when John used to take his foot and draw a line on the carpet, and he said, this is as far as we're going this way, so if you want to come along for the ride, jump on, because the train's leaving. But I just want to say that we got a lot of things done face to face, and I got a chance to get to know John, socialize with him, and it was just a real privilege for me to know this man who had such a good heart for all of Michigan. Contrary to what a lot of Democrats said, he was there for problems in Detroit, all the way up to fixing problems for the iron workers and iron miners in the UP. We solved a lot of problems for Michigan. And I just want to say that you look at the majority in the Michigan Senate, Leader Meekhoff, Speaker Leonard has a majority in the House, the Supreme Court has a majority, those majorities didn't happen because of some fluffy resolution. They happened because of the dedicated hard work that this man, this leader, worked on those computers to make sure those reapportionment maps those maps are stronger today than they were 30 years ago. John Engler, you're my friend, and I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with this man because he made more good things happen in Michigan than we can talk about in a whole evening tonight. God bless you, and thank you, John.
So you don't get to be governor if you don't win elections, right? And the first one was pretty darn close. The other two, not so close. But the first one sure was. And this group knows as well as anybody what kind of attention, dedication. We had some great stories about the original win from Dick. But here to offer insights by video, Mike Murphy.
Yeah, it's for John Engler. Of course I'm doing it for free. He won't burn the negatives. He's got me over a barrel. Nothing I can say no. Oh, hi, I'm Mike Murphy. It's great to be on the camera with you today. I wish I could be there in person back in my home state of Michigan, but frankly, as a broken down political consultant, I'm not allowed to leave California very much. You may remember me as the idiot who said there was no way Donald Trump could ever win, and before that as the genius who spent $100 million on the unstoppable campaign of President Jeb Bush. So I'm pretty much broken down and out of work right now. I do have a new job at the Burger King, and they are very tough about days off. So unfortunately, can't make it out there to Michigan, but I'm with you in spirit, and I'm very proud to be saluting my dear friend, former Governor John Engler. Two quick stories come to mind. 1990, he's running for governor. It's an upset. Nobody thinks he can win. But I saw this guy, first time I really got to know him, and he had an unstoppable grit where he never, ever quit. We were at a parade in West Michigan, Tulip Festival. It is a summer downpour. It is like torrential rain, buckets of it. Voters are hiding under awnings everywhere. I'm trying to find somewhere warm to hide. Perot has already jumped in the car. We're all like trying to avoid it. And there's Engler with a handful of soggy brochures that were disintegrating for the water, going voter to voter to voter, having one-on-one conversations, looking people in the eye, even who disagreed with him, and making his case. I knew that day that I thought this guy was going to win that upset election, and sure enough, he did. Later, I saw that same grit as governor. He never wanted to take a poll. John always thought that polls were a snapshot of what happened yesterday, and as he would say, I don't care about yesterday, I want to make the future. What are we going to do tomorrow? That made him fearless as a politician, something working for a lot of politicians around the country I don't see very often. We were doing the initiative to change education funding, the first one, and it wasn't going well. People didn't like the initiative, and they were mad at Governor Engler. We're doing a focus group in Macomb County. I'm watching through the one-way glass, and it's bad. People are mooning us. It is, throwing chairs. People in Macomb County, very passionate and direct in an entertaining way. My phone rings, my cell phone. It's Governor Engler. He's nearby. He had an event that just ended. How are we doing? Terrible, I said. They hate you. They hate the initiative. I'm coming over. You can't do that. It's a top secret focus group. Well, sure enough, he was there 12 minutes later. He was watching through the mirror while people were describing the things they wanted to do with him with zoo animals. And when the thing ended, the focus group, the moderator asked people how they were going to vote. 11 hands went up for no way on our initiative, 1 undecided. John turned to me and said, I think I can change their minds if I go in there. You can't go in there. It's against all the rules. Why not? The focus group's over. I'll make you a bet. Everyone I change, you give $100 to the initiative. I said, all right, fine. I figured it would cost me $100 because somebody would finally say yes to be able to go home. An hour later, he had 9 of them. And to this day, I was the largest personal contributor at $900 to the initiative. We didn't win that one, but we came back with a better one a year or two later, and we won that. And that was John Engler. A good agenda, political fearlessness, and the grit to just keep going and work and work and work and earn success. I'm very proud to call him a friend and a mentor. The victory in Michigan got my career started until I recently destroyed it. I owe a lot to John Engler, and I wish I could be there tonight. So, John, I salute you, and thank you for all you have done for my home state, the great state of Michigan. Good night.
We got a chance earlier, Jim gave us some comments about the family side of John Engler. Well, someone else who got to see the family side of John Engler was the person started in the security force, ultimately ended up leading the security force, the state police. Robert Grubbs is now the marshal for the Eastern District of the United States, but the Eastern District of Michigan. But he's somebody who was there in the professional, the outside, the public roles, and also on the personal side, and making sure that Michelle and the kids and John were all safe, which is no small thing. Robert?
I'm not giving up any state secrets tonight, so forget that. What an honor it is to be here tonight to pay tribute to my good friend and my former boss, John Engler. I think of the governor and Michelle as great friends. Even more than that, I think of them as family. Some define family with blood ties, but in my opinion, family is the important times in someone's life that you get to share. And as previously indicated, I was there from the very beginning when he was governor-elect, day after he won the election. I was there when he and Michelle were married. As a matter of fact, I went with them on their honeymoon. I'll tell that story at Michelle's tribute. But I was there when he lost his father. And John Engler is a role model to a lot of people. But that was his role model. And I have to believe that Matt and Agnes Engler are looking down from heaven today with very proud eyes at their son. I was there when his children were born. I remember that week quite clearly. We hunkered down at U of M. The governor never left Michelle's side. We never left his side. My duty for that week was to guard the neonatal unit, make sure that no Engler babies were smuggled out of the hospital. And I was there on one of the most catastrophic days of the nation's history. And of course, I'm talking about 9/11. And I had the sad task on that day of walking into the governor's office and informing him that 2 planes had hit the World Trade Center, and we were probably under terrorist attack. And that's when I saw John Engler, like I've seen him so many times before, put on his leadership hat, activated the Michigan emergency plan, put state police, National Guard on high alert, gathered community leaders, and just to inform them what was going on and to let them know that everything was all right. Very cool, calm, and collected guy. But I have my personal English story that I'd like to tell. And I'll take you back to 2002. I was the commanding officer of the governor's detail at the time. I get a call from the governor's executive assistant, Rachel Siglo. Rachel simply said, "Bob, hold on for the governor." I believe the governor was on the line 2 seconds later, but it seemed like an eternity. Because when the old man calls you, it's usually not to ask you how your day's going. But he put me at ease very quickly when he gave me my usual greeting. "Bob, how you doing?" I says, "I'm great, Governor. What's going on?" He says, "Well, the United States Marshal's job in the Eastern District of Michigan is open, and I think you're the person for the job. Minutes later, when I got up off the floor, he went on to say that, I think that your background, experience, and the skill set that you bring to the table marries up very well with what the marshals are doing. I said, wow, Governor, I says, I'm honored that you would even think of me in that capacity. I said, let me talk to my wife. He interrupted and said, Bob. He says, it's a presidential appointment. What you got to talk about? I want to say 3 weeks, maybe a month later, I found myself standing in a room with the governor and the president of the United States, George W. Bush. Still get a little worked up when I think. Governor said, Mr. President, I'd like you to meet your nominee for the U.S. Marshal's job. President turned, looked me dead in the eye, extended his hand, and he said, I am honored that you would accept this nomination. And I thought to myself, you honor. So I stand before you today, the longest serving U.S. Marshal in Michigan's history. And it's all because John Engler gave me an opportunity. So, thank you, Governor, for everything. Thank you for being the man that you are. And thank you for leading the state in a way that it should. Congratulations.
I'm also one who was given an enormous opportunity to grow and develop and do new things because of Governor John Engler. And it's not my place to be making a talk tonight because we've got so many spectacular voices, but I want to say what a privilege, probably the greatest privilege of my life, to get to work with John Engler. I greatly admire him as a person and as a political and as a community and governmental leader. I give you the 46th governor of the great state of Michigan, John Engler.
Thank you very much. Mark, thank you. What a wonderful program you've put together tonight, and my goodness, what a wonderful wonderful lineup of speakers, both those that came to the podium and those that were kind enough, Haley and Tommy and Mike Murphy, to submit a tape. So a fun evening for Michelle. Michelle's here, and I want to introduce the First Lady of the Engler years, Michelle Engler. Michelle, so. And making her first appearance on campus as a Wolverine alumna, Hannah Engler is here tonight. Hannah, stand up and so. We have 3 daughters, but only one has graduated from college, and that would be Hannah, so that's why she's allowed to be here tonight. We're hopeful their sisters will make it, but seriously, that Madeline's graduation is this weekend, and from William and Mary, and Maggie should quite comfortably finish up at Stanford in the middle of June, so we'll have 3 graduates, and they all did this in their 4-year allotted time. So, so Hannah. glad you could come up. And she got here because her good friend Kyle Finnegan drove her up here tonight. So Mr. Finnegan from Ohio, we're glad to have you here as well. So Michelle told me, she said, look, the program's long enough, you don't need to say much. But and I thought, that's true. I don't. And I didn't prepare anything, but knowing who was going to speak tonight, I knew there'd be lots of material to work with. And they did not disappoint, I have to say. To Governor Snyder, you know, that I remember that conversation, and he's really did take on then the first chairmanship of the MEDC and work closely with Doug Rothwell. They became, Doug and Sharon, who couldn't be here tonight, but became good friends with Governor Snyder. And but I have to tell you, the lesson I applied is one that Peter Secchi had taught me a long time ago. Peter described his style of management. He said, you know, when you're at the top, you know, you're the CEO, all day long people are going to show up at your door, and they're going to bring their monkeys with them, and they're going to try to leave the monkey in your office, put it on your back. And Peter's advice was, you tell them it's a fine-looking monkey. Now here's what you do with it. Make damn sure they take the monkey with you, otherwise you end up with all the monkeys in your office at the end of the day. And he said, that's no way to work. So Peter, thank you for the advice, and Governor, you are a beneficiary of that. So thank you for your comments, and thank you very much for being here tonight and during this entire program. It's absolutely terrific. I don't even know where to start with some of the others. My good friends from the Senate, Dick and Dan and Art, all of them told pretty accurate stories. Dick's in particular does dredge up a lot of memories, because that was 1970, and that was a long time ago. And he's right about that first house. I think my brother Jim said it was on Franklin Street, and I think that's exactly where it was, right by the university. It was a dreadful spot. Clearly probably in violation of whatever zoning he had even back in those days, but there we were for the primary season. Now the merciful thing was, in those days primaries only lasted about 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, I think we started kind of in June, it was all over the 1st of August, so it didn't, but it was tough. What Dick also didn't say is that many mornings he actually wasn't there because he'd gone home the night before. He had milked the cows at the Posthumous farm, and then he drove up early in the morning. So he did some ridiculous things himself. And Dick and I were at the ripe ages of, I think Dick was 19, I was 21 in this primary scene. We're the oldest people on the campaign, too. That was the other thing that was... The other thing was notable. It was the first election I was eligible to vote in, because in those days the voting age was 21. So I had never actually voted, and so when I did cast my first ballot, I got to vote for the best candidate. That was me. And we did win that primary by just a little bit of an eyelash. Carol Viventi was, in fact, the first employee I ever hired to work in state government. Dennis Cawthorn wasn't even the leader back in those days. He was the floor leader. But Carol and I was new to state government. I knew I'd make mistakes. And so I thought I'd better get somebody also new who would make her own mistakes, and at least we probably wouldn't tell on each other, you know, kind of a, but it worked out, and Carol and I stayed together for a long time, and then she's right, I did keep trying to bring her back. And the part about law school is pretty accurate too, although I would say that Carol and Dennis Coons, who was the third member, I didn't see Dennis here tonight, but Dennis and Carol started in January. Art captured this because he's right. When I got to the Senate, after beating one of the members of the old boys club, boy, it was a lonely place over there. It was a very lonely place, and he's right about the committees. The committees were, I was in the minority of the minority, and the committees were completely dreadful. And so I ended up, I said, I've got to do something here. I'm going to go crazy, and I went over to see Dean Brennan because the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court had started the school, something that Chief Justice Cliff Taylor or Chief Justice Bob Young have yet to do, is start their own law school. But given the popularity of the legal profession these days, probably a good idea not to start them. But Dean Brennan had done so, and Cooley was thriving, and they were accepting a lot of non-traditional students. In fact, former Speaker Paul Hilligans is here tonight, and he like I were, and Keith Pretty, who I saw here, we're a lot of Cooley alums. But so I go to see Brendan. I said, I want to go to law school. He said, you have to take the LSAT. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, we're trying to get accredited here or keep our accreditation. You better take this before you go. And if you do well, you can go. So I couldn't start until April. Carol was already a term ahead of me. So it takes 9 terms. So I had to accelerate, catch up with Carol. And there was one very busy summer. It was fortunately a summer when the House of Representatives was running and the Senate, of course, was not running and not in session. So I could take, instead of the normal 10 hours, I could take 16 hours that summer, and that helped me get back on track. And without accounting for maybe a course that I might have visited twice, just because I enjoyed it so much the first time I thought I'd do it again, That wasn't the con law course. But anyway, Art was a great friend as a leader in the legislature, and you can see some of the success that people have referred to tonight. We had leaders like Dick was the majority leader for the first couple of terms, and then he was lieutenant governor. Dan was the majority leader. Well, you've got leadership like that, and you've got people like Art. You can get a lot of things done, and Paul Hilligans, of course, played a key role over in the House in those days. But Art and Marcia became very good friends, and I must say his counsel and his sort of intuitive feel for what goes on down in southeast Michigan, out in Macomb County, he taught me a lot over the years. And Dick and I, from that very first campaign, the other thing Dick didn't tell is some of the stories about the re-election campaign, because Dick, having succeeded once, was willing to get talked back into another try. And so in '72, we've got another election against another incumbent, and it is a redistricting, and I had, Senator Miller, nothing to do with those lines for sure. But there I was facing a good friend of the then Governor Milliken, a guy named Dick Allen. And, but I had a little geographic advantage, and that was all it took. And I see Sid and Judy Smith here. Sid's help was invaluable in those days, chairing our finance committee. But we survived that. But I've now been a rep for 2 years, so of course we're moving up in style. Our campaign headquarters is a little different. And Dick then got to live above a garage in that one, at various times. And the problem was it was one of the hottest summers we ever experienced, and there was no air conditioning in that place, so that was a tiny bit of a step up. But there are a lot of old memories. The high school one is absolutely true, with one really important correction. I mean, they did have the timekeeper. We absolutely got jobbed in that contest, and we clearly would have won. We got a gold medal, but second place, and then he easily wins the state title. We would have won it. No, Beale City would have been #1, but we weren't there. Dick was also a state FFA president, and one of the reasons that I was interested in Dick, my father was the president of the Cattlemen's Association at the time, and he went to the state FFA convention, and he's telling me about this guy, Dick Posthumus, who was the president and gave this stirring speech, and he said, you really ought to recruit the guy. And I'm thinking, Dick Posthumus, where do I know him from? And, then it all comes back, the Caledonia disappointment. But, but that's sort of like my brother. I would work so hard and get these cattle ready. We grew up on a farm, we fed cattle. Jim's had 2 grand champions. My brother had 2 grand champions. I have none. Now, I feel that I probably helped to break the path for the rest of the Englers along the way, but never quite got across the finish line there. So I had a lot to compensate for later on because of these early disappointments. So people talk, what motivated them, what drove them. Imagine losing the parliamentary procedure championship, losing this grand champion steer thing, so you have to make that up. And so anyway, so that probably is, to Mike Murphy's word, that grit, where does it come from? But Jim's remarks were absolutely wonderful, and that summer at the lake that he referenced. The other thing I learned also, my partner in crime that summer was a guy named Pete Schaefer, but we were at the lake, and we thought it was a good idea because everybody likes music. So we got a jukebox, and we put it right out in front of the stand. We thought we'd make some money off that. But we didn't realize in the afternoon when the sun comes, and this was old vinyl records, guess what happens? They all crumpled right up, and we lost the whole jukebox. That was an expensive little proposition as well. Didn't figure that one out. I want to say also, just I guess maybe to Mark and to, we've got some department directors that are here. There's an awful lot of people. This was very much of a team effort, and one of the great fun things about being a Senate leader and then being governor was the chance to put together a terrific team, and the men and women who were part of that, we had a lot of fun. We did get a lot done, I think, but we also, I think, I'm very proud of the fact that we operated at a level of very high ethics and I think high standards of performance, and as a result, you know, we went through with some pretty good reviews on that front, and it was really toned at the top, and there are people that couldn't speak tonight, people like Sharon, Lucille Taylor, who was my counsel. Lucille was my counsel for 19 years, all the years in the Senate as a Senate leader, then all 12 years as governor, and she kept a pretty firm grip on things too. She didn't let anybody get too far out of line. And the other kinds of support, Mark mentioned his work at the agency, but Doug Roberts is here, our state treasurer, and between Mark and Doug, we had the entire 12 years of state treasury covered, and there were just a lot of men and women who made enormous contributions, and I wish I could name everyone, but I won't. I won't even attempt that. I'll just say collectively thank you to all of you who are here tonight, and thanks for coming out, lending your name to the event. I've got, you know, there's just an array of people. I saw Denny Shorneck's here. Denny was a key part of that staff. There are people here going back to the Senate days, and Carol covers the House, and the only other one in the House is no longer with us, and that's Peggy Shack, who worked for me and then was a very valuable assistant to Connie Binsfeld. And the other name that should be mentioned tonight would be Connie and John. She would have enjoyed the evening, and we certainly enjoyed the opportunity to work with her. And as Art and Dan and Dick will all recall, when we asked her to be on the ticket in 1990, it was a big surprise, but it really wasn't too much of a surprise if you actually thought about it, because here was a woman who grew up born in Munising in the Upper Peninsula, then went to school down in, Lenawee County, then married and lived a lot of her life in Oakland County, and then went up to Northwest Michigan and got involved, became a state legislator, state senator there. She pretty much covered the whole state. She was a perfect complement, and so it was an easy choice, and she had 8 great years, and she and John were great friends, and we miss her, and she had a wonderful life and a wonderful career of public service, and much of it coming even later in life after she had raised an amazing family. So, and then to Bobby Grubbs, just to end up with the Marshal. At one time I was thinking about political history, and I want to kind of close on this note, and I'll use Bob's history that he's made here as the longest serving Marshal in Michigan history. It was a great find to discover, and I for some reason hadn't realized that Frederick Douglass, actually, Bob is a successor to Frederick Douglass, not in exactly the same district, but he was a U.S. Marshal in Washington, D.C. as part of his career. And there are many marshals. I used to, I remember some of the marshals that were on TV, and some of them were U.S. Marshals, a little different than Bob's role, but I think Bob, I think Bob is kind of worthy of a series. I've been kind of, Murphy's out there in California, and he kind of writes these screenplays, and I've been trying to think, maybe in my, my years now that I did this, years at the manufacturers, years at the Business Roundtable, I got these other years, maybe I could get into a little bit of film work, and Bob, the Marshall Grubbs series, Marshall Bob, I don't know, there could be something there. I spent a lot of time working with Bob, because one of the great quests that I had throughout my tenure running statewide is to see if I could ever win the votes of Bob's mother and Bob's aunt, because they were kind of my touchstones in Detroit. I said, well, what's your mom think about this? About the aunt? No, so finally, I think after he was Marshal for a while, we softened him up a little bit, but it was a tough deal. You've been pleasant to listen to me for a long time tonight. I think history is important. I hope this does further the cause of Michigan political history. I'm afraid that this society will be the only place we have any history. With term limits today, we have no history anymore. It seems that every day is a brand new day and there's no institutional memory. I dearly hope someday we can change that. It desperately needs to be changed. You can't have the kind of leaders you heard from the podium tonight, Dick, Dan, Art, their careers, Paul Hilligon's career in this era of term limits aren't possible anymore. I know Speaker Leonard's here. I talked to Tom, and I think he's outstanding. And he became Speaker a few months ago, and by constitutional mandate, he's got to leave in a few more months. It just doesn't seem quite right that we cycle through that fast. And when you get somebody that talented, you'd like to keep them, and somehow maybe we can get that changed. But I also think it's important for the state, if we're going to be the kind of leader that I know we can be, the way we want to be, the things that Governor Snyder is working on, you need people with some experience to get this stuff done. And I just think 6 years in the House is too tight, and maybe if it's 14 total, you can divide it up however you want. Maybe that's better. Maybe there's something else, but what we got right now, I don't think is very good. So this, in the interim, then we better collect these histories. We better kind of remember how things used to get done, what it takes, how much effort, how much work it takes to get it done, and see if we can't help everybody understand where we started, how far we've come, and how much more needs to be done, because I think Governor Snyder's made this very clear. You got to be pretty relentless, you got to be pretty persistent, and hopefully it doesn't take too many dog years to get it accomplished. So thank you very much for letting me be here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. What a wonderful time I think we've had tonight hearing all the stories. I want to give a thank you, Mark Murray, for shepherding us through this evening and doing an amazing job. And to all the speakers, I think, as another token Democrat in the room, I think it really proved through to me that the team that you built is truly a family, and that came through and through the speaker's story. So thank you to all the speakers that shared tonight. Now I get to give a little appreciation gift on behalf of the Michigan Political History Society Board, and it is beautifully wrapped. Well, it is President H.W. Bush's autobiography, personally inscribed, and we hope you enjoy this and really appreciate your time joining us this evening. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to do a quick thank you to the Event Leadership Committee, Jim Haveman, Richard McClellan, John Truscott, Susie Avery, and to all that served on the host committee. This event, I think, was a smashing success, and I really appreciate all the time that it took to pull this together. And I think Mark did a wonderful job showing and talking a little bit about Michigan Political History Society and some of the events that we like to put together. I think Governor Engler mentioned in the era of term limits, it's now more important than ever to share these stories and how things actually get done. And pass that down to the new elected officials in this state and those that work in government. So please follow us on Facebook or check us out online. We have our website. Information is in the program. And with that, thank you all for joining us and have a good night.